We're the Ransom Brothers, Sal,
Sean,
and we're on the Garrett Smith podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 42. I think we're on 42. I keep losing count, but close enough. And today we have with us a couple of guys who I recently started listening to and reached out and wanted to be on the podcast. And I was actually pretty excited about it because they've got some really good stuff. And we're going to let y'all hear that today. We have with us the Ransom Brothers guesting on the Garrett Smith podcast. So how have you guys been lately?
Man, we've been great.
we're real good. We're busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have y'all been up to? That's usually my follow-up. So what's been keeping you busy?
Well, most recently we opened up for Midland on Sunday.
Wow.
So we've had that. I mean, that was the most recent thing we had going on. That kind of took up most of our time last week, was getting ready for that. We've been playing around. Now that like Austin's kind of starting to open up a little bit more, we're starting to do more West 6th, kind of more South Austin stuff. We're looking at Armadillo Den. It was the new venue that we got. I think May 1st is when our date is for that. So just getting more out in the open now that things are kind of starting to open up. We're getting more opportunities.
That's really cool because Austin. Everybody got hit hard with COVID, but Austin, especially when so much of your economy is based on live music, just to kind of see what downtown looked like for a couple of weeks after everything shut down was pretty scary. So it's good that y'all are able to get playing down there and everything.
Yeah. And it's definitely the last kind of area that's been coming back for us in terms of playing. We were actually just kind of starting to hack into some of the places we wanted to start playing, and then COVID hit.
Yeah, that's cool. So where are y'all actually based out of?
Austin.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So it's well, before I get into venues and everything, how was opening for Midland?
Oh, dude, it was so awesome.
I told you, go ahead.
Yeah, just the whole experience. We got there early. We watched them do their sound check, just kind of see how they, seeing a band like that operate and looking at a stage and thinking like, man, this is a full production that we're part of versus, a lot of venues we play. It's like, hey, get your stuff up there and do like a 2-minute sound check and then play.
Yeah.
And like Sean said, like, last week we were really busy getting ready for this, but it's honestly been like a month process of us mentally getting ready to just, planning everything out. And, but it was phenomenal experience, man. It was probably one of the coolest stages we've played so far. It was really awesome.
So what venue was that show at?
The Roundup in Bernie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's some beautiful area out there. I was actually recording in Helotes this past weekend, and it was really cool, except the drive down there. And I know this is going to sound like an exaggeration for all Texans listening. It really wasn't. This was the worst I-35 drive I've ever had in my life. It was awful. It started in Georgetown and went all the way to New Braunfels. It was just like bumper to bumper. It took me 4 hours to get from Temple to New Braunfels.
That's pretty bad, man.
Yeah. It's beautiful territory, just not from 35.
Yeah.
So you've been keeping busy. It's pretty good because it's been kind of like the bounce back time for everybody. And kind of tell me what you've been working on. You've been playing these shows, working on any new music or bouncing those kind of projects out?
So we got Saturday, we're actually going into the studio to record 2 new singles. So we're kind of splitting up our studio time between, we're going to do sort of rhythm section, drums and bass in one studio, and then do vocals, guitar, fiddle, pedal steel, all that stuff. So we're trying to, the goal is to have these 2 new singles, wrapped up and ready to go by middle of May, end of May at the latest.
So it's not often I get to interview more than one person in a band on one podcast episode. So I've got to ask, do y'all do things the typical, like layer everything, one person does their parts first, or do y'all kind of do like the traditional record it live and just get the best of everybody's track?
We layer. Now with the rhythm section, like they do kind of have it like everybody's in a room together. And first time we did it, I would go back into the vocal room and just to kind of have sort of the environment of kind of a live setting. Mm-hmm. I was singing, and then we would track a rhythm guitar, a bass, and then a drum track to kind of get. We were going for more of that kind of like Zeppelin, like early 70s sort of rambunctious sound. And the best way you capture that is just by letting the room kind of like keep everybody in. Once we needed sort of the more focused, articulate sounds from guitars and vocals, that's when we would go to another studio and just punch those in. But as far as the bass layer of the rhythm, that was all done at the same time in a room.
That's cool. So, and obviously the audience will hear this in a second, but I'm just going to go ahead and give a quick preview. It's that you guys kind of have like a Whiskey Myers kind of vibe to you. That last album they put out, I believe it was the Mud album. Y'all's music definitely captures that sound. And that's something, I mean, that's the kind of music I listen to. That's like country with a little bit of an edge to it. And I really like it. And I think everyone's going to listening to it today. But for anyone who's new and is just now listening to, kind of like give us the rundown of who's in the band and who plays what.
Yeah. So I'm rhythm / lead guitar. Sean is vocals, lead. We kind of, whenever we write songs, there are certain times when it's just Sean starts doing a solo and it's like, just take it on this one. And then there are some where we like to do a back-to-back solo. And you can tell the difference in the two solos because we have very different styles of how we play. And so that kind of country blended with rock sound that you're talking about, he grew up listening to a lot of old school country. And I listen to a lot of country too, but my backbone is like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, a lot of that stuff. And so I bring to the table a lot of blues, a lot of rock stuff. And then he kind of takes that a lot of times and we kind of morph it into what it ends up being. And then we've got a bass player, Phil, and a drummer, Austin, and they're not with us today, but they are fully part of the band with us. Sean and I do most of the writing though, and he's the strong lyricist, so I'll kind of let him take on a little bit of that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, at first it was like I had a lot of stuff written that they're full songs that I had played the band before, and just kind of watching sort of how that band operated. I was like, okay, I'll just take what I like about the writing and what I don't like about the writing and sort of try to do my own thing. And then when Sal and I met, when we started jamming together, started playing, I was like, hey, like I would hear him play a riff and I was like, do it again. And he would keep playing it and I would say, all right, I got this song. Let's see if it fits over it. And the weird kind of chemistry that happened from the more of us jamming was just he would have this lick or this riff that was perfect for how a song should start, for how a song that I had written should start. And we kind of just started realizing, when one of those things happens, we kind of have two models of doing things. It's either I have all the lyrics written and he's got a riff that's just killer and we pair them up, or we'll sit down with an idea or a theme of like, hey, I want to write a drinking song. I want to write a cheating song. I want to write what have you. And then we'll just sort of sit and as a concerted effort, hash out however long a writing session takes. And there's times where we write a song in 15 minutes. There's times where we have 4 different songs that we pull verses out of and change a chorus. And one's more of a labored way of doing things. And the other one's just like, it just happens like that.
That's pretty good chemistry. That can be kind of hard to find sometimes. That's really cool that y'all are able to do that.
Yeah, it's always been really interesting to me, like when I talk to my friends about it, just because, like you said, it happened like in the first 3 weeks of us playing together that I was playing a riff and he's just like, what is that? And I was like, oh man, some crap I wrote in like middle school. And he's like, dude, keep playing that. And he's like, well, that just fits perfect over this song I wrote. And I was like, well, that's weird, but it's a cool song. And then like 2 weeks later we did it again. And I was like, well, that's just odd. And, but great, in a sense. And so a lot of times, like what he was saying, when we kind of sit there and hash it out, I might come up with a riff or maybe he's come up with something and we kind of put our two ideas together and I'll be sitting there playing the rhythm section or whatever it is. And he just starts shouting lyrics out. And I'm like, I'm like trying to play and like grab the book. And I'm like, write it down. And he's like, did you get that? And I'm like, I think I got that. And I'm like, here's what I got. And he's like, no, that wasn't it. Hold on. And so, I mean, that's how a lot of them end up coming together. It's just kind of random. And it just like, or I'll play something. He's like, what's that? I'm like, I don't know. I was literally just making something up. He's like, keep playing that. And then he starts adding on it. And it just kind of, that's how a lot of them end up kind of blossoming. Right. And then we might not finish it right then, but it's like, we'll usually get 2 or 3 verses and a chorus, and then it's like, all right, let's table this and let's come back, get a fresh mind, and kind of polish it up.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's hear one of those songs now. I have written down that we're going to start off with Kodiak. Is that?
Yep.
That right? All right. Real quick, give me the story behind this one before we play it.
So I have never been to Kodiak, Alaska. I think I've seen a bear from a distance at a zoo. But I was at work one day. I was working for a recruiting company, and I was sitting at my desk, and it was like 10 minutes before closing time, checking my emails. And I had just this, the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot was a song that my dad used to play in the car with my brother, and I would go fishing with him when we were kids. And I just had that song stuck in my head over and over again. And I just decided, I think I had just seen an episode of Yellowstone where they have a bear and a bunch of stuff happens. For any of you watching, I'm not going to spoil it. But it just was this thing that kind of hit me between the eyes. And I just was like, okay, I'm going to kill these emails. And then on my way home, I had an hour commute from work to my house. And on the way home, I wrote that song. I think I wrote the whole thing.
That's so cool. It's nothing like picturing like wilderness and a bear and the great outdoors, knowing that it was written in a work commute in Austin.
Oh yeah, no. And like, I feel kind of bad. Like I wish I had this really, I mean, we have a song that was actually written in Montana that very much has that feel to it. And this one, people are just like, oh, it sounds so inspired. And I'm like, nope, I was just staring at billboards and traffic lights.
Where I wish I rather was right now.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm going to play that right here.
Captain Montgomery found 4 of the best boys in town. At 3 in the morning when snow started hardening the ground. No other way to earn $10,000 round here. Slaughterhouse pays, but not near enough this time of year. Last thing he said to the menfolk, if you're too married or too old or too scared to face the cold, lock your door and hold your woman by your side. Don't complain when my boys come tearing down that rock. It's gold enough to buy this land far and wide. Johnny turned 14 the first day the party set off. Daniel left the rest of his family down in Saginaw. Tommy's beard grows in patches and spots, but he's grisly as they come. Robert won't leave home without a Bible and a flask full of rum. Last thing they said to the menfolk, if you're too married or too old or too scared to face the cold, lock your door and hold your woman by your side. Don't complain when us boys come tearing down that rock. It's gold enough to buy this land far and wide. We're young and we're proud and our guns sure are loud. All our life fits inside a gunny sack. But we're man enough to find what's on that yonder face inside of that wicked witch we all call Kodiak. Montgomery and his party found a clearing in a cut between the hills. They kept the fire low, kept up a fight against the chills. A groan rang out clear between the pines, loud enough to stir the camp. Night watch saw marks in the snow, sure wasn't no hoof stamp. 10 feet of fury came barreling through the branches and the snow. Musket fire only lasts till it's time to reload. Heed the warning of the menfolk. If you're married or grown old, smart enough to last the cold, lock your door and hold your woman by your side. Don't you listen to them boys and go tearing up that rock. No more sense than the blind leading the blind. They're young and they're proud and their guns sure are loud. All their life fits inside a gunny sack. But they're fool enough to find what's on that yonder face inside that wicked witch they all call Kodiak.
All right, so take me through the story of the band, kind of when and where y'all met and how everything came together.
So he was saying earlier he was working at a recruiting company. My roommate was working there too at the time. And so when he started, he came home one day, my roommate, and he's like, hey, we just had this new guy start, says he plays guitar. And I had just started picking my guitar up again, like maybe 3 or 4 months before meeting him. I've been playing since I was like 12, but I lost touch with it after college. And during college, for the most part, I was focused on some other things.
I did the same.
And so I'd lost touch with it, and I was kind of just starting to pick it back up. And so this cat comes over to jam one day, and like as soon as he does, well, actually, we met at a Blind Pig.
Oh, yeah.
First.
Yeah.
And it was during South by.
Oh, wow.
This was 2 years ago, I guess.
2 years ago.
And
yeah, right around this time.
Yeah. And so we're sitting there watching Prophets and Outlaws. That's who it was. That's the name of the band, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
They're going on before whoever. They used to be Six Market Boulevard.
Yeah. So we're watching them play, and this guy's talking to me about like all the gear up there. And when we first met, I was very, very meat and potatoes in terms of like, I'm like, dude, there's a guitar, there's an amp. That's all I know, And he's like shouting, oh, that's a Fender this, and that's a Gibson that. And I'm just like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. So he comes over to jam, and quickly I was like, oh, dude, like he can play.
We get into the room, and it's our other coworker, and he's like fired up. He's like, man, we're gonna go start a band, and we're gonna take over the world. And I was just like, all right, man, let's go jam. And so I go over there, and like I had been touring with a band before, so I was like, okay, I want to hang out, so I'm going to bring all my stuff. So I brought my amp, my pedal board, my guitar. And so I pull everything out, and then there's kind of this look on everyone's face in the room like, what is all this stuff? And we're just like, oh, let's just jam for a little bit. And so we start playing, and I would just do like, little riffs and runs and stuff. And him and my other coworker are just stopping and are like, oh, he plays. Like, he actually plays.
But so we did that for, I don't know, an hour or two that night. And we had a great time. And like right after that, Sean was like, hey man, like, you can hold a rhythm just fine. He's like, I got a couple shows coming up in College Station. He's like, would you want to play? And I was like, sure. I mean, it had been like a decade since I had played anything live. Like I played in high school in a band. And I was just like, sure, man. I was like, I was confident enough with holding rhythm. When I said I was picking my guitar back up, I was like starting to kind of work on my lead again. So we end up going down to College Station for a Saturday and a Sunday gig to play for some fraternities.
Neither of them paid us.
I'll let him talk a little bit more about that. But I mean, we had a great time. It was, it was just kind of like a whatever thing for me at the time. Certainly wasn't thinking like, hey, we're going to be, writing and doing anything serious. And I mean, now we're where we're at, but I'll let him dive a little more into that trip.
So I've been trying to I wanted to keep playing music, but I kind of was like phasing out of that and getting more into the corporate world and, trying to find a job that my mom and dad wouldn't be asking questions about. And I had kind of found just a few ragtag college kids that were like, oh, we'll play. So I found this kid that I won't call him a drummer. I'll just say he plays the drums. So he was not a very good drummer at all. He was terrible. But he was like, I got this frat gig party thing. You want to play? And I was like, yeah, why not? And so I was like, I don't have a bass player. And he's like, oh, we'll find one. And so fortunately, he had like a bass rig set up, and I was like, it was his brother's. And I said, hey, Sal, you want to come play this thing? He's like, yeah, sure. So we go down there, and it's this ag fraternity at Texas A&M. We get there, we're playing on top of a round deck at a pool. Huh. It's very windy, it's overcast, and you know how much it rains in College Station.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there, like, my buddy who actually runs sound for like venues in College Station is like a buddy of mine that he kind of hooked it up and was like, hey man, it's pretty windy, dude, and the clouds look kind of rough. And I was like, yeah, I know. We're going to just see how this goes. So we get to the whole gig of watching the PA system just sway like the deck of a ship. And I'm stressed out the whole show. I think we're going to like have to, compensate this sound dude for having one of his speakers fall in the drink. So I'm like, we get to that show. I go up and I go up to the fraternity president and I was like, hey man, I just wanted to know when we're getting our check. He's like, oh, Kyle didn't tell you? I was like, Kyle's drummer. I was like, no, Kyle didn't tell me what's going on. He's like, yeah, we're not paying you. This was kind of a favor to him. I was like, ooh, good. So the next day, that night we go out to, we go to a frat party, and I'm inside. We used to be called Good Springs, and I'll tell you why. He's inside and I'm inside the house, and we're talking, and I'm up talking to this girl, flirting with her, and Sal comes around the corner. He's like, Sean. He's like, what's up, man? He's like, come here. I'm like, I'm a little busy here, man. Can I talk to you in a minute? He's like, no, you got to come here now. I was like, all right. So we go back in the room, and we see this big sign that says Good Spring Drive. And I look at it, he's just like, that's the band name. I was like, that is the band name. And so the next day we show up, and everybody's like, by the way, what's our band name? We're like, we found it last night. It's Good Springs. We go to this other frat party, and we're in this big kind of like hangar. It's like sort of one of those metal barn type deals. And these frat guys are all standing around moving tables and stuff, and they just look like they're all hungover. And I go over and talk to one of them. I was like, hey man, we're looking for Josh. He's our point of contact. He's like, who are you guys? We're like, we're the band. He's like, oh crap. Josh didn't call you? We're like, no, Josh didn't call me. What's going on? Like, yeah, we're supposed to cancel you guys. We blew all our money on composite photos. And I was like, wow. we don't have anything else to do. We'll just play. And they're like, are you serious? We're like, yeah, we'll play. We ain't got nothing better to do. So we play a 3-hour set, I think.
Yeah.
We played for 3 hours with all covers.
I think we had one original.
One original that we saved for the very end.
Yeah.
And the dads just gave us pity tips in a big bucket. I think we ended up making like $400.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. But
yeah, it was there.
That could have gone a lot worse.
It was there.
I've made less than that when I was getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was their parents' weekend. And yeah, I'm like listening to him talk with this guy. And he's like, yeah, man, we blew our money on composites. He kind of looks at me, and I kind of just looked at him like, man, we're already here. I ain't got shit else to do, dude. I was like, I practiced. I was like, I might as well, get more practice and play. And he was like, all right. So yeah, that first show, it was him playing guitar, singing. I was playing bass, and then that other guy playing drums. And then the Sunday show, he had a buddy coming in from Houston who was playing bass. So I was playing rhythm guitar that day. And so that guy had showed up already too. And we kind of gave him the rundown, and he was kind of the same thing. He was like, I ain't got nothing to do. We're like, well, if we make some tips, we'll toss you some money for tips. He was like, all right, man, that works. So
it was a weekend that, like, I remember getting back in the car with him, and I was just like, I don't know if this dude's gonna hang out with me anymore. We're about halfway down the highway from College Station to Austin, and Sal just looked, he's like, dude, that was fun. He's like, I want to keep doing that. I was like, you want to keep doing what we did this weekend? And he was like, yeah, man, that was fun. Let's do it again. I was like, do you want to go do some open mics in town or something? And I was like, sure. If you want to keep hanging out with me after what just happened, then yeah, let's go.
Yeah, it didn't take him long to realize I'm probably one of the most easygoing guys out there. So.
Well, I got to ask, did y'all go to A&M or did y'all just know somebody there?
I did.
Cool. What class year?
Class of 18.
Cool. Grad school, class of 15.
Gig 'em.
I went to T-State. Eat 'em up.
Awesome. There you go. Okay, so I went to the Texas State game at Kyle Field last year before, whenever that was like the opening game.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to say, the Texas State fans are actually a blast.
Oh, they're great.
Like all the fans from both sides got along great in the sections I was sitting in. Like the trash talk was funny because all the Texas State fans knew how the game was going to go. And so I was by a bunch of Aggie alumni and a row of Texas State guys and their girlfriends, and they were just rooting for a first down. And so y'all finally got a first down in the first half. And I mean, they jumped, all the Aggies were hugging them and high-fiving, and then they got called back for penalties. So it was just like,
oh, yeah.
But I mean, leaving the tunnel that night, they were doing the eat 'em up chant and everything. I was like, man, they stuck with it. Respect.
Yeah, we're used to not always pulling a W, man, but you know, we got a good crowd that goes out there to sport and drink.
That's true. That is true.
You got a river running through your campus. There's really not a whole lot to be upset about.
Yeah.
I used to work for Houston Baptist University, and they had their first game right after Hurricane Harvey hit was at San Marcos. And I was like, look, we'll get a charter bus and all this stuff. We'll go. Well, bus got canceled because of the hurricane. I said, all right, well, caravan, you guys deserve a break. Get out of Houston for a little bit. We'll take you to the game. Took about 20 students to San Marcos. I mean, bunch of Baptist kids painted up in blue and orange walking through that parking lot. I mean, beer cans are just flying at them and everything. But
a little culture shock.
What's up?
A little culture shock.
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, y'all are going to learn today.
Yeah.
There's a whole nother world of degenerates out there, and they are in San Marcos, Texas.
So how did y'all go from Good Springs to your current name?
So, and I mean, we both were just like, Good Springs sounds cool. We'll roll with it. And we just got this look on people's faces when they were like, man, y'all sound pretty awesome. Like, what's the band name? Good Springs. Oh, it's just cool.
Blank. Not like no one ever said like, man, that's terrible. But no one ever was like, even like, hey, decent name. They were just like, all right,
that's nice.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's like, the Band-Aid you slapped on it.
Yeah.
So we meet with Chris Beal is, I guess, the principal songwriter for the South Austin Moonlighters. And they've been around in Austin for a real long time. And we looked up to them just because they were local greats. Like, I mean, they were awesome in Austin. And Chris heard us. We opened for him one night. We opened for the Moonlighters at Buck's Backyard in Buda. And you know, struck up a kind of a friendship with him, met him, talked to him. And Chris this was right before COVID happened. This was like February of 2020.
Yeah.
So right after that gig, COVID just killed everything. Mm. And so we meet with Chris. Or we emailed him. We're like, hey, man, we're thinking about trying to record some songs. Can we, hash it out with you? He's like, yeah, let's work on it. So we get on some Zoom calls, talk about our songs, show him everything. He's like, okay, I like what I'm hearing. What is going on with this this Good Springs name? Where are we at? And we're like, we're open to changing it. He's like, I think you should absolutely be open to changing that. That Good Springs sounds like a mini mall in Arkansas. It does not sound good. And so he said it in the most loving way possible, but he's like, and we're like, do y'all have any other ideas? And we're like, no. And he just goes, all right, think about the brothers. Think something with the brothers. And so I go home and I was watching The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And And then Jimmy Stewart's character in that movie is Ransom Stoddard. So I just, at this point, I mean, and Sal and I are still this way. There's times where I'll call him and like we say 2 words to each other and hang up because that's all we need to say to each other. So I call him and I'm like, "Hey Sal," he's like, "What's up, man?" I said, "What about the Ransom Brothers?" He goes, "Yep, that's it." All right, we're gonna get on the Zoom call tomorrow with Chris and pitch that. He's like, "Yep, cool." Hang up, call Chris the next day. We pitched it and he's like, "I love it." He's like, that's got way better ring to it. That matches y'all's kind of personality and aesthetic. Let's roll with that. So
I will say that the sound of that name matches the sound of your music. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it made sense.
Yeah.
Like as I'm listening to it, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. It matches.
I mean, we gave it the test run through like all our friends, and everyone that had been kind of following us at the time. And it was like, hey, okay, we're thinking about a name change, the Ransom Brothers. And I mean, it was just about 100%. Everyone was like, oh, they were like,
yep,
that's cool. That's good. They were like, you should do that if you're going to do it. And, it was kind of one of those, like, if we're going to do it, we got to do it now before we actually put product out there to say, hey, this is us.
And this was a very disruptive transition for all of our 30 fans. So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always tell people, so you would think it'd be easy to name a band, and sometimes something happens and it happens organically. Sometimes you really got to think about it. I tell people to watch the scene from The Dirt where they're trying to name Motley Crue. It's like sometimes you got to go through some effort, but it really works. And you guys actually have individual names, I believe, relating to the band. How did that happen? Because it reminded me of the Ramones.
I don't know. One day we just started kind of BSing about like, hey, we should have some stage names that, were the Ransom Brothers.
Well, we kept getting people asking us like, who's the brothers? Who's the brothers in the band? And we just we kind of got to a point where we were joking and like, we found the 2 guys that looked the least alike, and it would be like him and our ginger, pale skinned drummer. It'd be like, they're the brothers, same mom, different dads. And anyway.
Yeah, but no, just from that. And on that note, I mean, when it was just him and I before we found our rhythm section, like, I don't know if you can tell exactly from how we're sitting, but how tall are you?
6'3".
I'm 5'6" with boots on, dude.
Oh, okay.
I
actually couldn't tell from how y'all are sitting. Like I pulled off the illusion.
Yeah, I'm a beanstalk.
I'm 5'6" and I'm Hispanic, and I'm significantly darker than him. Like, people would come up and they're like, "Are you guys brothers?" And I was just like, look at him and then look at them, and yeah, sometimes we just be like, yeah, and they're like, "Oh, that's what we thought." And I'm like, all right, I mean, it works, whatever.
I had a feeling about those boys.
But no, we just started BSing about it one day, and then kind of all coming up with these different names, and so. Our drummer is Pop Ransom, and that was just kind of a nickname he already had. And we're like, man, that works great, Pop. Phil, we came up with Rip because was that something to do with?
So the rule was that you can't name yourself. The other guys have to name you.
Nice.
And I just looked at him one day, and he looks like Rip from Yellowstone.
That's what. Okay.
I was like, cool, easy enough.
Mine was Slip because I had an interesting. I have various nicknames from college, and Slip was one of them. So we were like, all right, that'll work. And my favorite is his, which is Newt. And so Sean's the youngest out of the whole group. And one of his favorite books and movies is Lonesome Dove. And so like we were sitting there tossing around some ideas, and I was just like, it hit me. I was like, dude, he's Newt Gall. I was like, he's a young buck that's always getting slapped around by us. Like, come on, man. He kind of just shook his head. He was like, damn it, man, really? Like, it makes sense, and it's your favorite book. I was like, come on. He was like, well, I can't disagree with it if that's what y'all are all saying. We're all like, it's Newt.
Well, between Lonesome Dove and Jimmy Stewart movies, I mean, you got good taste. So
yeah, my whole mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family are from North Texas. So I wasn't allowed to listen to, read, or watch anything that they deemed too poppy or too mainstream. So I was like, okay.
Can relate.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to throw in another song here, and I'm going to pick Fear of Missing Out.
invested. Now I'm waiting on this misery to take its toll on me. I've been cheated as much as greeted. You can tell the two apart by the way they show their teeth. You don't know the whole time you've been talking, the sharpening their teeth to bite your back. You don't know the whole time you've been walking, staring at your feet to find the cracks. I've been backstabbed, licked all of my scabs. My fear of missing out has gotten the best of me. I won't beg for an invite, cause it's impolite. Just wait for an open seat. If there ain't no vacancy, you can have what's left of me. You don't know the whole time you've been talking, the sharpening their teeth to bite your back. You don't know the whole time you've been walking, the staring at your feet to find the cracks. Well, my circle is getting smaller. I ain't got as much to do, but I'm walking a little taller. And the dogs in my corner are howling at the moon. They're all walking the same old road, still singing the same old tune. And that's for the rest of you. You don't know the whole time you've been talking, the sharpening their teeth to bite your back. You don't know the whole time you've been walking, the staring at your feet to find the cracks.
Of all the songs you put together, which ones have the best backstories?
Well, I mean, you probably agree on this. So High Hopes and this one in particular, this is a good example of him and I writing together. Because like Kodiak and part of the show, he wrote, pretty much brought to the group and was like, here's a song. And we were like, that's great. Fear of Missing Out, I had like this little intro, which ended up getting cut from it when it came down to recording. But I had this intro and this kind of initial rhythm progression, and I had like 2 lines, and I was just like, I don't even know where to go from that. And I showed it to Sean, and he was just like, keep playing that. And then he just ran with it, and we kind of hashed out all of the lyrics right then. And then ended up kind of polishing that up. And then High Hopes, I had the intro riff for it, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with this, but it's cool. Actually, I think we were just sitting down drinking whiskey.
Well, what happened was, like, he had this riff, that riff at the beginning of High Hopes, that bow, like, I heard him doing that over and over again. I was like, okay, that lick is too cool not to have some lyrics. So I was like, okay, you and I are going to go in a living room and we wanted to have it be this heavy rock song, so we took 2 amplifiers and acoustic guitars and sat them in a living room around our couches and just were like, we're just going to turn them up loud and play that riff and try to come up with something that makes sense. And we just slowly I think we spent 3 hours just splitting a bottle of whiskey and just drinking and writing until we could put something together. And by the end of that night, the song was essentially done.
So cool. So between the two of you, or even as a collective group, is there a song that like means the most to y'all as a band, or do each of you kind of have a favorite?
I'd say we probably each have a favorite.
Yeah.
100%, and everybody knows it. Mine is High Hopes, because I get in front of that stage and I hit the boost pedal and I just try to blast everyone away as far as I can with that opening riff.
Yeah. Mine's part of the show. And I always ask people what they think it means, because it's always different. It's about this girl who kind of like travels around with the band and gets passed around, and is just, like they like, there's a lyric at the end. It's like, you can write your number down, but it's better if you don't. And there were just girls that when I was in the first band I ever toured with, there were girls like that all the time, in the bus, in the trailer, in the green room. Like, they was always around with the band, and they kind of toured with the band. They would show up, and somebody in the band was their boyfriend that night. It wasn't me, but
just for the night.
And it's just like, Almost Famous, like Penny Lane.
Yeah.
Like kind of that, like that's sort of what that song's about.
That's cool. Now I'm looking forward to listening to it again, so I can really be like, okay, so that's what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys could make a music video to any of your songs, what would it be? And now that you've told me that story, I'm kind of wondering if that would be it. But what would y'all say?
The two new ones that we're doing, I mean, I would do Talk of the Town 100%. Like, I think that song, Talk of the Town, is a song that we're fixing to put out that it's just a good classic, like boy meets girl kind of dance hall-esque song that, I mean, it's just a fun one.
I'd probably agree with that. And I mean, I think I've told him before, to me, the way we kind of attack that song, and as of now, the way we play it live, it's got a real Reckless Kelly vibe to me, which I love Reckless Kelly, and I mean, too. So that was the first thing when we first so there's been a lot of times when he came to me with a song, and like I hear it acoustically, and I'm like, meh. When he first brought that song to me, I was like, meh. I was like, I like rock and roll stuff more so, and he was like, just trust me. And then we did it with two electrics, and I was like, I get it. I get it now. He was like, I told you. I was like, all right, because sometimes you just gotta let me play with the electric.
You're not expecting it to, like, if you play it on two acoustics, I will admit it has this very kind of like Alan Jackson-y, sunset-y vibe, and that's not what we wanted. And when you put two, big amps and sort of like listen to that chorus just kind of punch, it just sort of kicks like a mule once you get to the chorus, and like it takes you out of that like swingy kind of western waltzy vibe, and it puts you right back into that rock and roll chair.
I'm looking forward to hearing that. When do y'all plan on releasing the new stuff?
Middle of May, I think, is when we want to have it out.
Middle to end, just kind of depends on how all the studio work goes, and then we'll probably be working with a company to do some radio promo. So we got to gig as much as we can to raise some money for that, because we're essentially blowing all the money we have raised from gigs to do the recordings, and then we'll have a little left over, and it's like, all right, time to raise some money quickly, because radio promo is not cheap, which we found out. But at the end of the day, we're kind of at that point where it's like, if we don't start doing stuff like that, then what's the point of us doing this? Because it's just an aspect that has to happen as we continue to progress and try to get to the next step. And we've certainly come a long way from where we started. And at this point, it's like, all right, with these two songs that we're doing, that's the logical next step, is make sure we get some promo out there outside of us, just on our social medias and our friends, so.
Well, let's go ahead and throw High Hopes in here, and we'll let everybody hear that line you like to crank out.
Yeah.
asked me for a smoke to bump. She didn't give me a warning. Baby doll pig staring me in the face. Looks like I ain't leaving this place. I know it's a damn disgrace. It's reconvene in the morning. She asked me how I got so skinny. Said I've been stuck out in the snow, climbing up that mountain till I reach the top. Can't slow down and Lord knows I can't stop. Hanging by a dream, putting tension on the road, and the only thing between me and the ground is high hopes. Minutes on a Friday night, ain't a damn soul in sight, except those two in a fist fight. Thank y'all for coming. Split the tips out in the van, roll up some of that contraband. Next stop is in Spokane. Let's get the engine running. I ain't been home since last December, and I don't plan on going back. Been gone too long now to remember just when this train rode off the track. Climbing up that mountain till I reach the top. Can't slow down and Lord knows I can't stop. Hanging by a dream, putting tension on the road, and the only thing between me and the ground is high hopes. Slow down and Lord knows I can't stop. Hanging by a dream, putting tension on the road, and the only thing between me and the ground is high hopes. And the only thing between me and the ground is high.
So, for upcoming plans, projects, goals, what are some of your favorite venues in town to perform? Because, I mean, you've mentioned some of the Austin-based ones. I mean, it's been a while since I've been to the Blind Pig, but you mentioned that one earlier. Where are some of the places you like to actually travel to?
Crossroads, Fredericksburg.
Yeah, we played out in Fredericksburg quite a bit. Crossroads is a newer one for us. I think we've done maybe 3 or 4 shows out there now.
I think we did 4.
But just a great venue, sound guy that's always there is super helpful. The crowd, I mean, we usually get the crowd going in no time.
Depends on what night you get. Sometimes you'll start off with like kind of the evening dinner crowd, and it's like older mom and dad with their high school kids, and you come out like just blaring Jim Croce, and they're like, "What the hell?"
Shoot, what else? Man, the roundup was awesome.
Oh yeah, that was pretty bad.
We should be back there from how things went. So looking forward to that one again. There's a couple in Austin that we haven't really hacked into, which I know we want to. Haven't hacked into Whitehorse, but we definitely want to find ourselves there. We were fortunate enough before all of this COVID madness to play the Saxon Pub probably about 6 or 7 times, maybe 8 times even, under Good Springs. And man, the day that place opens back up and hopefully we can find our way back to there would be huge, because it's just
we're bringing
the best listening rooms, man, to play.
I went to one of Bree Bagwell's shows there. It's the only time I've gotten to go, but it's such a cool venue.
It is.
It's just the kind of place that, like, you're not having to compete with the beer in front of everybody there. Like, you're not having to. The worst part for us when we first started playing was just, you go to these open mics and it's just somebody on a Tuesday night who just wants to get hammered with their coworker, and you're there like, all right, I'm going to sing you this Alan Jackson song. And when we started writing songs, we would sing them, and that's actually how we got the Saxon Pub gig. Like, Jody Abel's Witherspoon now was there with her husband, and they're sitting there in the audience, and we played our originals, and we just thought she was one of the drunk lady in the crowd. So she was just like, play your originals. And we were like, no, we already did it. She was like, play your originals. I was like, no. And her husband goes, you better play your freaking originals. You're not playing at Saxon Pub. And I was like, yes, sir. So we play a couple songs, take a break. She calls us down and says, sit down. And I was like, yes, ma'am. She goes, you better stop playing George Strait or Alan Jackson. And I was like, but that's what everybody wants to hear. She's like, all right, I'll see you and I'll raise you. August 24th, you're playing at Saxon Pub, and you better not play any covers. I was like, yes, ma'am. So
I thought it was like, all right, that's not going to happen. And so this was like the 3rd or 4th time we were doing an open mic at this place in Round Rock called Long Branch Saloon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're coming back the very next week. We're walking down the sidewalk. We each got our acoustic in hand, and he's just like, hey, we did book August 24th for Saxon Pub. And I'm just like, that's a real venue. And I'm like, dude, we got to find a band. Like,
we don't know anybody.
It was just us with our acoustics. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and I was probably at the time like 2 months away. And so he had made friends with a couple of the guys that work at the guitar store, literally next door, South Austin Music. And so he talked with them, and he ended up kind of wrangling them in to come play a show with us. So made it happen. And thankfully, after that one, they said, y'all can come back. So
it's a pretty good deal to have.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was awesome.
So if anyone out there who is not a part of your following and hasn't been latching onto your originals yet, where would you direct them to follow you and download your music?
Instagram. We have a Facebook page. We do have a website. I'd say Instagram's been the strongest kind of metric for us to sort of track who we're reaching out to. And right now, Spotify, iTunes, just, dig in there. That's where our stuff lives. That's where the new stuff's going to be. We're about to spruce up our website a little bit because right now Instagram's sort of where most of our information lives. But the best way to find us is just, go listen to us.
Instagram really is the best platform for being a musician, I feel like. I mean, measuring your metrics, reaching new people. I just felt the algorithm's better for people who aren't super famous.
Right.
Plus on there, like we're somehow smart enough to eventually figure out a link tree. And I was like, I can just put this link to, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all the big ones that everyone wants to check out. Cause, I quickly found out, I'd be talking to people and I'm like, we're on Spotify. And they're like, I don't use Spotify. I use Apple. And I'm like, well, we're on that too.
Or they're asking us like, hey, do you have CDs? And we're like, who uses CDs?
We have been getting that one lately. And it's like, most people are like, we tell them, well, we're not going to make CDs. And they're like, well, that kind of makes sense. And we still get some people, they're like, it'd be nice if you did. And I'm like,
Be a lot cooler if you did.
No.
Why don't I give you a cassette tape? Does that make you happy?
Yeah. Well, what I did is like everybody kept saying that, and I finally was like, all right, I got CDs of an album that I'm redoing currently, and I finally got all these. And suddenly, once I had them all in the mail, then people stopped asking where they were. I was like, well, now I've got them. And now, do you have vinyl? I'm like, no.
Yes.
Got to get an 8-track.
Our budget for the charge that it's going to cost us to make $25 worth of vinyl for like 100 of them. Yes. Vinyl.
Honestly, and with as distance as people has been with COVID, you know, the reopening and everything, you can print out like a QR code, put it on the tables, and people can just scan it during your show and go download your music. And it's amazing how people would rather do that than to get up and just walk over to your merch table and pull out cash and buy something sometimes. It's just the world we live in being a one-click shop.
Yeah, and what we're kind of starting to realize is that it's the best way for you to market your music is just you have to kind of find some magic in the studio that like people hear it and they want to tell somebody else about it. And like we told ourselves, I mean, we've met two camps as far as how it works. We've met the artists that they are so good that they just kind of can't be ignored. And then we've met the artists that they've had a huge team. They've got a lot of like money and people and connections invested that, you know, that is kind of doing more legwork than the music itself. And we want to try to kind of marry those two and just be like, yeah, we have the budgets, we have the people involved, but like eventually we want our songs to be good enough to where it's like, doesn't matter how much money we're spending. If people don't want to listen to it, then there's not really much else we can do from there.
Yeah. Well, I think y'all are pretty savvy on both. And I say that because, I mean, it's like y'all are easy to talk to. Y'all have kind of like, I wouldn't say gimmicks, but I mean, it's easy to market Ransom Brothers and you came up with the names. And it's just listening to your music. You've got that sound that, you know, you mentioned Reckless Kelly. I mentioned Whiskey Myers. It definitely blends in with those guys. And that's becoming more and more popular. And so it's kind of like the timing of everything and the way you do it. I think everything you just said will benefit you pretty well.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm going to pull up the big 3 questions if you're ready. The first one is, if y'all could collaborate with anyone out there, who would it be?
I'll let him answer that one first.
Oh.
Interested to see what you say.
I mean, Evan Felker. Like, I think being able to pick his brain and kind of see how the songwriting process. I mean, I know Mike McClure and RC, everybody in that team. I know everybody in that band had kind of a hat in the ring, but Evan was kind of like the guy driving the ship. Mm-hmm. And I would like to sort of, because like everything, a lot of my influences were a lot of his influences. And when I started to figure out kind of like a lot of the Lonesome Dove characters and idioms were something that he carried with him. He was really into, I mean, you can tell the Jerry Jeff, Robert Earl Keen, James McMurtry side of things. You could just hear like that part of Oklahoma that he's from come out and everything he wrote. So, I mean, I'm born and raised in Austin, Texas. I grew up in Leander, like Round Rock area. But most of my like roots, most of my childhood, summers, Christmases, Thanksgivings were spent in North Texas. So I kind of have a kindred spirit in that way, but I'm still an Austinite, and I'm trying to kind of find a way to sort of be myself and have Austin and that Central Texas vibe be what comes out of me, and sort of own that, you know, geographical sort of upbringing. But I would like to sort of be able to see what his mindset and what his thought process is as far as coming up with the song. I already know what you're going to say.
Well, real quick though, have you read his book that he put out about the Red Dirt scene and like history of it?
I did not.
I've not read it yet either, and actually I don't honestly know if he's officially released it, but Evan Felker's putting out a book about the history of Red Dirt music, and he's got a lot of stuff about like Ragweed, Bolin, Jamie Lynn Wilson, all the Oklahoma artists. And I've seen those artists post pictures of them reading it, but I don't know if they're previewing it or if he's actually released it.
Did he work on that with someone? Because I
think so.
I know I heard something about a book about that, but I didn't know Felker had anything to do with it.
I think he did. Yeah.
Well,
he put it out at a kind of a strange time. Like he had been kind of gone for a while.
Yeah.
And then the book got announced out of the blue, and it was like, what's going on? So he worked on it with somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to do it, but mine has to be kind of two-part, because if you'd asked me that before I met him, 100% I'd have just shot out Whiskey Myers.
Yeah.
So I am very, like, in the past couple of years, I've gotten better at listening to new music, and really, like, usually every night when I go to bed, I listen to music and I try to find something new, whether I end up liking it or not. And it's because I was so stuck in, like, just constantly listening to AC/DC, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, all that stuff. I was like, man, I've got to listen to new stuff. But Whiskey Myers has always, ever since college, been absolutely, like, my favorite newer band. Firewater, man, I can't tell you how much of my life college was in the background. So it would 100% been Whiskey Myers. But since meeting him, I'm tempted to say Jason Isbell, because he introduced me to him, and I really had no idea about him before.
And he sticks up for country music and honoring its roots and everything.
His songwriting, man, and the music behind all of it too is just something else, man. And it's, ever since I met him, before, you know, I was the kind of guy who, I never paid attention to lyrics at all, man. All I heard was guitar, just guitar. And I've gotten a lot better at, like, listening to certain artists and, like, finding myself going, like, damn, like, the way he's writing that, the way he said that, you know, I'm paying attention to it more, and it's helped me become a better writer myself, in terms of, you know, what I bring to the table sometimes, to go, hey, here's a song. Because, I mean, I have no problem admitting it. When I would first bring him, like, songs, when I first started kind of even coming up with ideas, I was like, hey, I put something together. You know, I'd put it in front of me. It's like, you know, all right, that's an idea. You know, I was like, you know, all right. But it's come a long way, man. And part of it is just working with him and seeing kind of how his outlook. And, you know, when I do bring something to the table, he, you know, gives me good advice on, you know, I see what you're trying to say here, but it doesn't work because of this, or try to do it differently in this way. So, yeah.
That's really good to have that combination. 'Cause I'm guilty myself of it's. I don't know if you've noticed it, but, like, for me in the past few years, just being a musician, you find that there are hundreds and hundreds of more songwriters out there, and they're always, like, on the same level. It's like, where do these people come from? And then you suddenly, out of the blue, it's like everyone and their mother is a fan of fill in the blank. And it's like, I don't even know who that is. And now suddenly everyone's into them. So it's like, got to put them up on Spotify and start listening. And you feel like you can't keep up with all the new ones. And
oh yeah,
it's crazy. Like on the Texas Music Life polls, I try to follow, like, everybody who's in there. And if, like, I'm paired up with somebody that I'm like, all right, vote for me over this person, I'm like, oh, they're probably way better than me. I don't know. I got to go, like, listen to them, but it's difficult. It
is, man. And, you know, diving into as much new music as you can really opens up and makes it clear that it's like, you know, our producer told us, he was like, you know, you can have a good song and a good production, but you got to think about how much else is out there for everyone to choose from. Mm-hmm. And when you start thinking about it, it's like, holy crap, we have so much work to do if we really want to gain, you know, a huge audience, because there's thousands of other people that they could choose.
And what we kind of realized the more, and this was something that I knew when we went into it, because, I mean, the guys that seem to be doing the best are the ones that have a brand that you want to associate yourself with. Yeah. There's a reason why Limp Bizkit and Nickelback and, like, all the band. There's a reason why I can't remember. I don't know, Maroon 5, or I don't know. There's bands that, like, they get really popular, and, like, you can see how many producers and publicists and PR and, like, you know, A&R people at record companies are just like, do this, I'm right. I'm not a musician, but I've been in the music industry forever, and you do this and you'll be famous. We'll guarantee it, because we've sunk like $600,000 in this album. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, we don't have a lot of choice but to be famous. And then you look back, time rewards you with having a legacy, because you don't take the time to actually do your job. I don't know if you're going to bleep out cuss words, so I'm sorry.
It's humorous. Go for it.
But the thing that we've kind of really told ourselves is the two things that we absolutely have to do if we're going to do this right, are be ourselves, be authentic, because you can be cool or you can be authentic. If you're cool, you're not going to have enough time to be authentic. And if you're authentic, over time, you'll be cool.
Yeah, that's so true. There's a lot to that. And you see a lot of artists even here in Texas, and some that have gotten quite popular, who it's like they know they've gotten popular, so that becomes the show more than the songwriting, and you can just hear it taking place.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't going to last.
You know,
Morgan Wallen.
like it was a big thing for me to learn, basically, just like a lot of it is about the brand. And, you know, as I started looking up these new artists that I don't really know, but they're gaining traction, like I find myself sometimes looking at someone's Instagram page and going like, man, that's a great page. They've got great content. And then I look at someone else's and I'm like, well, why is there a picture of your kid eating cereal? I don't care about that at all. I don't want to follow you anymore. And then like it clicked and I was like, man, all about the brand and like what you're putting out there. And like, you know, what we put out there is stuff that we agree on and we go, hey, we like that. We're going to put it out there, but it's got to be right up there with the music too. So,
and I think the number one rule that we've kind of just decided for ourselves, that because we know it's true, is it's got to look as cool as it sounds. And that's like turpentine coming out of my mouth, because I hate saying that. Like it tastes bad saying it and hearing it, but it's so true. Like we've learned that aesthetically, I mean, like I had this conversation the other day with one of my buddies. He was just like, you know, what is it about those bands that like they don't quite make it or they don't really get there? And it's like, why is Tecovas making as much money as Lucchese or more?
Yeah.
Like, because you've made cool, I wear something that I fit in, and you know, I'm gonna walk around and people are gonna see that I have Tecovas boots. You've made cool accessible. You've made fancy and nice and looks good accessible to people who otherwise couldn't afford to buy a $900 pair of boots.
Yeah.
And your music kind of has to do the same thing. It's got to be cool, has to be what, you know, like the music we're passionate about it. We write great stuff. We put together, all arrangements are exactly the way we want it. But it's got to be concise and digestible enough for a large amount of people to listen to it and align with it.
Well, it's the right path to be going down. And before I ask the second of the big three, I do have to comment on the country and rock mixing and balancing. I love country and always will, was raised on it, but I definitely have this playlist that I play every day called Top Rock on Spotify. And it's only it's like 5 or 6 bands. It's just Guns N' Roses, Scorpions, AC/DC, Motley Crue, ZZ Top, and Skynyrd, and Billy Squier. And I just like rotate it over and over again. And so I'm like, that's probably, that explains some of the songs I put out. People are like, well, that one's not really country. I'm like, but it was fun.
Yeah, exactly. It was fun.
It was fun. But you did hear it. The second one is, if y'all could headline any venue out there, where would it be? Sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. Moody Theater.
Yeah.
Where's that at?
ACL Live.
Oh, Moody Theater. Okay. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of concerts. My dad, he's a pretty big music buff too, but like he's super nice, and he calls me out of the blue all the time. He's like, "Hey, how about 2 tickets to Buddy Guy?" I'm like, "Cool." He's like, "You're coming." I'm like, "All right." So I've seen a lot of concerts there, and like every time I'm there, I'm just like, man, one day, what if I were on that stage?
Full disclosure, I thought you said Booty Theater, and I couldn't tell if y'all were messing with me or what. And I just tried to keep a straight face. I was like,
there's this.
All right, so what was that?
Yeah, we've always had a very big passion for cabarets.
Y'all could play in Colleen. All right. All right. The big question, the big finale one: funniest or craziest story you can tell from your music career so far?
It's kid friendly.
And if their parents are letting them listen to this, that's on them. It's whatever you want.
Man, I feel like the story about the drummer, that one's pretty funny.
Oh,
okay.
Actually, that is pretty good.
Is that one better than Sam's Town Point?
Yeah, I'll let you tell that.
All right. So we had a band that would play at Saxon pre-COVID, and it was 2 guys that I met that play in a progressive rock band. So it's kind of like if you took like the theory behind Tool and like kind of the loud like kind of attitude of like Queens of the Stone Age. That's the kind of band they play with. So we got to a point where it was just like, we're wanted to go record some songs, and they're like, guys, we're sorry. Like, this isn't really our bag. And we were like, that's cool. So we cut ties, we go get our production team, we record our music, get everything done. Then our producer was like, so you guys got to find a rhythm section now, right? And we're like, yeah. They're like, okay, I'll see if I can find some people. But we found Phil and Austin, our guys. But we did not find them immediately. We had to go through some auditions with some random people. And so Sal is a whiz at Craigslist for amps, guitars, drums. You want to buy it? Sal can find it on Craigslist. Craigslist is not the best place to find people. And I thought that was obvious, but apparently not. So Sal
trying everything, man.
Sal looks at, what's ironic is that we found our bass player on Craigslist, but he's from Germany. So he was as like, it was not something he wasn't suspecting. Anyway, we found this guy who's like drummer, and I get a call from Sal, and he's like, dude, I found this drummer on Craigslist. And I'm like, kind of raised eyebrows. I'm like, all right. He's like, yeah, he plays, he does lessons. I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, he plays in a Willie Nelson cover band. I was like, all right, what does he do for a living? He's like, I don't know, but he's cool. He's cool on the phone. We're going to audition with him next week. I was like, okay. So we get to this storage unit, and I'm already like, he doesn't have a jam space. Like, no. He does it here. And it's like way up in Pflugerville. I'm like, okay. So I get there, and he's late. And we're kind of sitting around waiting, and I'm like, I'm already not happy. And so we see this smoking, like 97 F-150 with like a bed cover roll in, or no,
Suburban.
It was a Suburban, yeah. The smoking Suburban just rolls through and parks in this place. This guy gets out. He looks like he's about like 240 pounds. Gets out, got a ponytail down his ass. He's wearing this like army camo, like digital army camo hat backwards with like a super sweat. He's sweating profusely through a black t-shirt. I don't know how you do that in September, but he found a way to do it. And he's got like ripped up cargo pants and flip flops. He walks out, and he's got like a crystal necklace and gas station aviators. And I'm like, oh my God.
He just looks at me dead in the eye, and I just kind of gave him this look like,
it's like, I don't
know what to tell you, man.
So we
gotta try.
We are already off to a horrible start. And so I'm like, okay, this guy better be the next Neil freaking Peart. So we'll just tell him how to dress.
So before we go up there, we're like loading everything up, and this guy is just like, hey man, he's like, are you 420 friendly? And I'm like, oh man, I don't mind, whatever. And he's like, cool. So then we go up to the unit, and you got to take an elevator up to the third floor. And it was a nice AC, indoor storage unit.
It's like one of those big ones off 35.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, it ends up being, I did not know this at the time, but a lot of bands do this. They rent storage unit. That's where they rehearse.
Yeah.
But at the time, I admit, I thought I was like, this is kind of weird and sketchy. So we get up there, and immediately I'm like, oh man, I forgot something. So I have to go downstairs. So I come back up, and as soon as the elevator opens, the entire hallway smells like weed. And I was just like, oh no, he meant like,
now
we're going to spark up now. And I just knew when I saw Sean's face, he was just going to be just screaming at me silently. And so I turned the corner, and he was just standing there with his guitar, just beaming me, just like, and I'm like, let's see how the guy plays.
So we played for about 30 minutes, which we played about 3 songs for 30 minutes. And I didn't sing. We didn't have any mics. We just sat there and jammed for a while. And I was like, we're going to get through this. And about 30 minutes in, I was like, all right, man. Well, we got to be down south in about 45 minutes. We got another audition tonight. And he's like, all sad. And then he kind of knew the jig was up. And so we leave, and he's just like, all right, I've heard it 1,000 times. See you later. And then we get outside, and I get in the truck, and I just looked at Sal, and I was like, no more Craigslist. If you find somebody from Craigslist again, I'm going to I'm gonna. Well, so he calls me a week later and I was like, I found a bass player on Craigslist. I was like, Sal, no. Turns out he's like a fantastic bass player.
So to that end, the first guy, he had no social media, so we didn't get to kind of, look. So Phil had social media. I was able to look. I was like, dude, he looks like a normal dude, looks our age, because we definitely at the end of the day, we wanted someone in our age range that we could, hang out with at the end of the day because we see each other a lot. And so we were able to do kind of, our little homework on Phil, and he had some videos of him playing. And I was like, look, it seems like he could play. But yeah, man, it was just, it was tough, man. And like probably about 5 minutes in, like right after this guy had lit his pipe up, a couple that was at the unit across the hallway, the hallway's 4 feet wide, is getting something from their unit, and they're just like silently like opening the door, kind of looking at us, and we're like, hey. Like we're the musicians hanging out, just smoking out the whole hallway.
You guys want some reefer?
Yeah, it was awkward, man. I admit it. And I was just like, we got down there, and he was like, never again. I was like, well, nah, we got to do our homework.
Hold on.
I took responsibility. I was like, that was my bad, man. Didn't work out well.
That's great. I feel like we've all kind of had those auditions and those experiences.
I mean, part of it, man. And like, it's funny, I told him, and I was talking to friends after. It's kind of like blind dating for musicians. Like, it sucks, but when you're new and you don't really have a foot in the door in the scene, and you don't know that many people in other bands to really talk to, it's like, what do you do, man? And at that point, it was like, we've got 4 singles now, and we want to start pushing these, to venues so that we can get a shot in the door. And that is how we've gotten most of our gigs, is just sending, MP3s of one of those 4 songs along with a quick snippet of here's what we're doing. And it's like, man, we got to have a band ready to go. So it was like, if it means Craigslist, Facebook, whatever, we'll do it. So,
and what we're recognizing right now is like, building a brand is ultimately what's going to kind of sort of get everything moving. And we're looking at this in terms of how do we write music that A, we believe in, but B, we can get a large amount of people to jump on board with. And it is that balancing act. And a lot of people that we talk to in the scene, like, they are very scrutinizing in Nashville. They're very critical of like, everybody likes to bash on Luke Bryan and Blake Shelton, but there's a reason why Luke Bryan and Blake Shelton are where they are. And it's because they have mastered accessibility. They've mastered outreach. They've mastered exposure. And we just kind of realize, you can't knock those guys because they're doing well. And am I saying that I want to write music like them? No. Am I saying I want to write my music and put it in a space that they live in? Yes.
Yeah. It's a pretty good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on here today. This is really cool. And like, I started listening to y'all's music a couple weeks ago or so. And like, as I was listening to it, I was like, this is some good stuff. So I have no doubt the new stuff will be great as well. I'm looking forward to seeing it get spread far and wide. And I'm going to have to come catch one of your shows soon. And I will actually send y'all, I'm playing down in Georgetown soon. So I'm pretty close by. Maybe I can catch y'all there.
What venue?
Place called Roots. It's like down in the town square.
You ever go to Wrench Brewery?
Not yet.
We will jam out there sometimes with our buddies, but like, just, I mean, if they give us a call and we're in the area, we'll just bring a couple guitars. But no, that's a great spot. You ever go to Barrel and Amps?
Haven't gotten to yet, no. So I hadn't really gotten to breach much into Georgetown, Pflugerville, around that area before COVID hit, and so I'd kind of done more like north and then down by the coast.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, yeah, man. Make sure to give us a shout, and we'll pay attention to what you got coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Likewise.
Yeah, man.
I definitely want to come catch y'all soon for sure.
Yeah, man.
Do y'all have any shows coming up? I should probably ask that.
Yeah. Thursday we're at Rebecca Creek. The following Thursday we're at Crossroads. The following week on a Wednesday, I think we're at either WTF or Rustic Tap on West 6, somewhere on West 6.
We are at Rebecca Creek Thursday, Rustic Tap next Thursday, Crossroads Thursday after that, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and then Armadillo Den May 1st.
Cool. So looks like I've got plenty to pick from then.
Yeah, man, we got quite a bit coming up. So just let us know when you're coming in, man. We'll
for sure. We'll do.
Hang out for sure before and after.
Awesome. Well, folks, be sure to check out the Ransom Brothers. Be on the lookout for that new music. Hit up all the socials and everything. And guys, y'all stay safe. And it was good to have you on.
Hey, thanks so much for having us,
Thanks
man.
a lot,
you stay safe too.
Yeah, y'all have a good one.
You know that bottle well, poured your glass for show and tell. Kiss my ass and go to hell. It's just like hello. Disregard and reprimand, playing cards with a band. Seems like you understand, like you're part of the show. You can play a man like a Steinway. Need someone like you on the highway. You're a boot on a cigarette, a stretch mark on a second set, folded cards on a winning bet, hanging up the phone. A letter you write when you get mad, a letter you write when you get sad. Them boys don't sound half bad. You here alone. Rug burn and a rolling rock, don't you know how to knock? Come on around the clock, send him on his way. Play with the fat man's hair, play a little truth or dare. Make him forget his cares and make sure we get paid. Hear that voice a little less every day. Not listening to what the mirror's got to say. You're a boot on a cigarette, a scratch mark on a second set, folded cards on a winning bet, hanging up the phone. A letter you write when you get mad, a lantern you light when you get sad. Them boys don't sound half bad. You here alone. Don't you make a sound, moving on to the next town. Maybe I'll see you around, maybe I won't. You know what happens now, curtain call, take a bow. You can write your number down, but it's better if you don't. 'Cause you're a boot on a cigarette, a scratch mark on a second set, folded cards on a winning bet, hanging up the phone. A letter you write when you get mad, a lantern you light when you get sad. Them boys don't sound happy.